Hey, you guys, I wanted to come on here and give my commentary regarding the school to prison pipeline concept that affects little black boys and girls from a very young age. It did take me a little while to gather information and to research this topic because I wanted to be able to accurately cite my sources and give you guys reliable stats to reference. Also, I wanted to do commentary on this topic because I did receive positive feedback about the video with Dr. Clark and Dr. Wilson. And since you guys actually like my educational and informative videos, I will try and incorporate one or two of these every once in a while. So, with that being said, I will begin first by explaining a little bit about what the school to prison pipeline is. The school to prison pipeline is a system in which children in schools are exposed to what some experts refer to as a zero tolerance policy, which is when a system is implemented to enact harsher penalties or punishments towards a specific demographic of students. And the earliest known stats for this system have been traced back to 1974, sometime after the final proceedings of the civil rights movement, where a study was conducted that determined that minors were more likely to have experienced some penalty, such as suspension, at a higher rate as opposed to their white counterparts. This study was recorded and saw that from 1.7 million suspensions in 1974 to 3.1 million suspensions in 2000 were given to black children, which is quite an exponential jump between eras. Reasons for suspensions were of microscopic proportions, ranging from simply bringing scissors to school to nail clippers. Now, I do want to insert my commentary into this. I know we just began, but can you guys imagine just bringing a simple pair of scissors to school with you and immediately being chastised by your teacher and given an out of school or in school suspension? And see, that's the harsh penalty that these children face. And unfortunately, I still think the system is used to unreasonably paint black boys and girls as some form of predators that need to be tamed. I mean, just imagine if it was your child who is absolutely innocent being treated like an adult facing these charges and possible incarceration. I mean, that's basically what they were being treated like. And the worst part about this system is that this isn't even the end. It actually gets far worse. With the children facing these unrefined punitive actions, it gradually gets worse. They, in essence, are going further down the pipeline to the juvenile justice system. And this happens by way of relentless suspensions, which can ultimately lead to expulsion. And without access to quality education, it can lead some children and teenagers to deal with harsh realities of life prematurely. And psychologically speaking, because their minds are not actively engaged in educational content or some form of edification, it can potentially lead them into making juvenile decisions, which leads to dire consequences, leading them into some type of a detention center. And horrendously, the situation, it just proves to be far more substandard for little black boys and girls who have special needs. And again, you guys, I do just want to pause for a moment because something that is completely asinine to me is the fact that children with special needs tactlessly fall under the system. Now, granted, some states have certain stipulations in which children with behavioral or special needs are supposed to be given protection, but for some states, they may have these laws but not necessarily abide by them. I mean, imagine having a little boy or girl with special or behavioral needs, and some of you probably do, but imagine them facing mistreatment or not getting the quality care they need because of a behavioral need that was not met. I couldn't imagine the sheer devastation that these parents face and are possibly still facing because of this system, especially because as black people, one thing you guys have to understand, the world is already against us. So, of course, I think we can all surmise that this is definitely a portion that is considered a part of white supremacy because it is something that oppresses and greatly affects black people and children. It's no coincidence that this system is most effective on us, and that's why I advise us as an alternative to maybe consider other alternatives like maybe homeschooling, or if you want to, maybe try something different like online schooling or some other method that's other than what's just been traditionally presented. And if you guys would ever give consideration to this idea, but are concerned about things like maybe lack of interaction and social skills amongst peers of their age, I recommend taking a look maybe at something like your local community events, like park and recreational events, sports, some type of weekly club or extracurricular activity to help ensure your child or children can still have access to socially develop that interaction and have peers of their age as friends. Now, I did have to detract for a moment because, again, this entire thing is a lot to deconstruct and understand. But to get back on topic, one of the main reasons why this system is actually effective against us most is because socioeconomic status. Now, let me make this disclaimer. In no way, shape, or form am I saying anything negative about where someone lives, but I do believe that due to the public schooling and its lack of quality resources, it may present a major concern for why children are likely to endure this type of maltreatment. Think about it like this, you guys. Imagine the absence of competent and experienced instructors or teachers in these schools, coupled with classrooms that may have an overload of students and even lack of child psychologists and counselors. All of these things give way to cataclysmic results. When you think about a system such as this, the students are literally destined for failure from the start. All of these execrable circumstances, and if that doesn't discourage your child or children, then they are still subject to standardized testing. And I may save that for another video because standardized testing is another method used to discriminate against Black children. I'll save it for later. Also because it starts to pour into the No Child Left Behind Act, which ties into standardized testing. So I'll save that video for later. But another thing we have to also take into consideration is the funding of the school as far as where it is spent. Now, you would think the budget would go directly towards the improvement of overall education and the resources for teachers to be able to teach the children with, but instead it is given to law enforcement such as police or school security, and since proper screening is not done or qualifications are overlooked in this setting of school, these law enforcement members interact with the students with diminutive portions of training, and that in itself can give way to results of disastrous proportions. And you guys have to keep in mind that if your child doesn't face expulsion or suspension, they can be sent to an alternate school for corrective actions. Now, these schools in some ways will mirror the state of public schools, in my opinion. Things like minimal resources, and what I mean by that is minimal resources such as compassionate teachers, poor quality textbooks, and these schools are not even held to the same standards education-wise, so they don't have to adhere to the typical rules and regulations that normal schools have to comply with. And in severe cases of escalation, students that are subject to the criminal justice system as a result of the failure by the school. One state in particular actually has a percentage of 80 where students don't even have lawyers. This happens as the students gradually go further down the pipeline towards detention centers or juvenile holding confinements. And another thing, what's worse about this level of escalation is that when it comes to students attempting to gain access to quality education after this, it is excessively more difficult for them to actually get back into school, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's the equivalent of an adult who faced some type of charge and they try to apply for a job. That one charge denies them access to a quality way of life or basic survival. And now what I want to do is I actually do want to give you guys my full and final thoughts on this. The school to prison pipeline undoubtedly affects Black students the most, and psychological warfare, I feel like that it stems from our image being heavily distorted and tainted from propaganda and media. And I believe that because we don't have control of the narrative, we are ostracized and vilified. And it's obvious that not only is systemic oppression and white supremacy prevalent in this situation, but if you think about it, a multitude of other factors are also present that stem from this one centralized point. Honestly, the most alarming part of the system is the fact that the children with special needs don't get their qualities that are needed for them to sustain themselves in an educational environment. I mean, I know I keep referencing that point, but that to me, I think is very important, and that takes precedence over a lot of issues because children that have special or behavioral needs, they should be able to have a little bit more attention because they obviously do have some form of an impairment that they need a little bit more attention and resources to be able to help them with their education. Now, I can't even imagine a teacher becoming upset at a child or enacting some kind of a disciplinary action towards a child with a behavioral need. I'm willing to bet that some of these teachers don't even have the proper certification or licensing showing that they have expertise dealing with children that have behavioral or special needs. And I actually had done some research on this as well. The requirement that a teacher needs to deal with children who have these type of needs, they typically requires a master's degree or licensing through the board certified behavior analyst and board certified assistant behavior analyst. And a bachelor's would actually be needed for the BCAB, which is the board certified assistant behavioral analyst. And the teachers who play a role in the school to prison pipeline more than likely do not have these specifications, or if they do, then again, the quality in which they deliver the education to these students is severely deficient. And even in general, when it comes to these obstacles that students face, the main people we are told to depend on in society is the teachers. I mean, we're told that these facilitators are the ones that we can expect to gain insight from when it comes to quality education and when it comes to functioning in a routine world. But what do we do when those expectations are not met? Then the students suffer as a result of this system. Now, one thing I do want to make clear, I know that this system obviously isn't in every single school across the world, but I wanted to create this video to show that there is a ubiquitous system that is designed to psychologically drive Black students into a path of destruction from the start. And I honestly believe that it can be countered. If you have a child that you feel is subject to these types of conditions, I highly recommend the options I came up with earlier, which is to opt for homeschooling, possibly try some online school, or maybe even try just another school in the city if one is available. And as far as socialization is concerned, there are extracurricular activities that children can participate in to still get the same level of interaction with other children. Now, these are just my thoughts on school to prison pipeline, and this video was made purely for educational and informative purposes. I will leave some links to my sources below in the description box if you guys are interested in the stats. And make sure you weigh in below and leave your comments on what you think about the system. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.